Climate finance is one of the important topics at the heart of the negotiations. Since the convention, the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capacities has applied to finance as well. So there's been this understanding that financial assistance will be provided by developed countries to developing countries under the convention, and that has been reiterated again in the Kyoto Protocol and in the Paris Agreement. And then since the Paris Agreement, we even have a broader and further guidance provided by the agreement where there is a long-term goal towards making finance flows consistent with a pathway toward low GHG emissions and climate resilient development. And the Paris Agreement further emphasizes how transparency and predictability of climate finance support is important and how we need to measure progress on that support over time in the global stock takings and processes like that. The main challenges at the moment are understanding the scale of the investment needs, particularly in developing countries, for supporting the mitigation investments for a low carbon pathway, as well as adaptation investments to improve climate resilience against the impacts of climate change. Particularly in developing countries, it's important that there is that balance between mitigation and adaptation financing and support provided. That is a challenge, an ongoing challenge, and the future development of that is important to understand. Further to that, there is great support that could be provided through the global community, particularly the financial and investment community, investors and banks, and also pension fund holders, normal retail investors, to understand and signal their support for the Paris Agreement goals in making finance flows consistent towards a low GHG emission and climate resilient pathway. At COP25, the parties will be focusing on implementing the rulebook that was agreed for the Paris Agreement at the last COP in Katowice in Poland. In that COP, a lot of them agreed on the specific topics and the parameters that they should be reporting on, but now they're working on the formats and the templates for reporting that information. And my key issue here is how in the Paris Agreement dynamic, all parties will be reporting some of this information to the convention, not just developed country parties. And particularly developing country parties will be understanding more about their financial needs as well as the finance that they've received. So that can help common understanding among all the parties about how much financial assistance is being provided and mobilized in the developing countries themselves and how much more is further needed.
And just the link between what will be negotiated by parties and the link to the GCR.
In terms of the financial operational entities of the convention, such as the Green Climate Fund and the Global Environmental Fund, the COP will be providing further guidance to those entities about how they should continue the momentum they have, especially through the Green Climate Fund's first replenishment period, where significant amounts of finance have been mobilized already and will continue to be mobilized. And so the Green Climate Fund, as it starts to deploy that finance, will be receiving further guidance from the parties through the convention about how that can be made more effective and scaled up and increase its deployment rate. We can expect further progress on the reporting formats. Countries will understand more from both sides, developed and developing countries, what their expectations are in this regard, what further support they need to implement the transparency requirements in the Paris Agreement, what they need to communicate on the finance they provided, what they need to communicate on the finance they've helped to mobilize from other sources other than themselves, what the finance they've helped identified as what they need to implement their mitigation and adaptation pathway, and as well as the finance that they've received and making sure there's that stock taking going on. So we can expect more progress on that and further common understanding among the parties on that aspect. And then as well as that, we can expect further guidance around the financial entities under the convention, such as the Green Climate Fund. It's just undergone its first replenishment period, so there's a lot of momentum to help maintain beyond that. and after Paris in helping make sure there is further financial assistance and resources available for developing countries.